Go home and read these words again. Go home and read these words again that we've already heard, this story of Gethsemane. Go home and read that again. Go home and read John 3:16, and if you want to have it tattooed on the back of your back or on an arm somewhere, do it, brilliant. No, but go home, because these words are the eternal words, and I hope my words are helpful. So this is week 3 in our series on creation. We've been asking ourselves the question, how do we as followers of Jesus engage with the world around us, and not just in the living building blocks and concrete and people of the world, but how do we engage with the world around us in terms of the ecology and the environment? What's our response? And many churches around the world are using this season as a season of creation, a season of taking into consideration and care once again the world around us. And so Roy came to us on the first session and gave us this image of this duty, this joy of care, this first created order that was put in place where humanity was supposed to be in this intimate relationship with God and creation. And the sort of snip image of God saying, here's this wonderful garden, look after it, and Adam and Eve just go and eat it. Instead of protecting this amazing gift of life, they just go and eat it. And in a sense, there's that illustration of how we live in the world, just consuming it, what God's given us to look after. We prefer to chomp it up instead of look after it. Then secondly, Craig came last week and showed us an image of the temple. I'd never even thought about it until Craig had brought the images to us, the image of the temple that had been constructed in the Old Testament following the plans of God with the plants and the images of creation all over the temple. This image that one day creation will be re-established again. There's a thing to hope for and work towards, and the temple was that image of what that will look like. There's an image that we can work towards. And so the idea that the temple was like a garden, like the garden that we'd fallen from. There's the garden of the temple that we look back to and think we've fallen, we've come a long way from our first calling, but there's hope, and the temple was the image of what it might look like to be in the future. And so we find ourselves again in a garden this morning. We've had the garden of creation, we've had the garden of sort of past pain and future hope, and now I think we're in the garden of salvation. And I think this garden is possibly one of the most significant gardens in the whole of history. And if you're here this morning exploring what Christianity is about, what Christianity might look like, and why is Christianity different to any other philosophy or world image or anything that's ever happened before, I think you can't understand Christianity without being in this garden, without coming to this garden, without absorbing what's happening in this garden. This garden is the garden of salvation, and here we find Jesus in this garden. If you don't go to this garden, you can't get Christianity. You can't understand it. You can't fully comprehend what's going on in the cosmos and in humanity. I started to write this last week in preparation for this morning. God, who fully knows pain, rejection, betrayal, he fully understands rejected prayer, he understands hatred and fear. God, who wants to find any alternative and yet chooses to be handed over to his creation for torture and murder in order for him to save them. This is the garden of salvation. The funny thing that happened as I was writing the text, you can see it, my pen changed colour because I had to change ink cartridge halfway through. And as it did, there was a transformation in the text. It changed from going from black towards a more of a pinky purpley colour. And there's something that happens in our garden that is similar, something that goes from dark to a different shade, to a different colour. You cannot understand Christianity unless you come to this garden. The God who's made creation looks for any other way to save them. And actually what happens is he says, I want to do your way, Lord. I want to be your servant in your eternal plans. And he gives himself over for creation to murder him. An incredible garden that we find ourselves in this morning. I was thinking about it, if I was going to do a piece of theatre, or if I was going to make this into a stage play, I was thinking, how do I do this? If thinking about how I could activate this into a piece of theatre, what I would do is the first stage, first scene, we see God in community, there's God complete. And I love that. It's our very own Irenaeus, another thing, thank you, Craig, who brought the image of God the Father, who has Jesus the Son, and Jesus, the Holy Spirit, his right and his left hand. Oh, and the image of creation, so creating God in perfect community with himself. But on our stage presentation, he's wearing a shiny costume. And on one hand, there's the sign of Jesus, and on the other, there's the sign of the Holy Spirit. And this is the God figure on our piece of theatre. And he's stood in the middle of the garden. Obviously, this is going to be a really bad piece of theatre, and theologians afterwards will go, it was incomplete. But we're just trying to work on some of the images this morning. So, the God figure, and he's wearing a shiny costume representing Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And then we see Adam and Eve. They sort of enter from stage right. My right. They enter from stage right. And they look a little bit like God, but not quite. There's something a little bit different about them. They're Adam and Eve. They look a little bit like God, but not quite. On the stage left, there's a tree. And there are trees everywhere. We've made the stage so it's amazing. There's trees and they're hanging down and it's beautiful and it's like light and dark, and we're playing with all these different images and things, and there's sounds of creation. But there's one big particular tree here on stage left. And Adam and Eve come in and they have the conversation with God, and they're in relationship with God and everything's good. And God says, you need anything, any of that, but look after this, look after this. Adam and Eve wander up and they start eating the fruit on the tree there. And it's a fruit that we don't really know, but what they're doing is they're scooping it out with their hands, and they're almost like a honeycomb. It's almost like a fruit that's like a tree, and they're scooping out the fruit from inside and they're eating it, and it's tasting good. And then they sort of drop it because they realise something's happened, and the fruit just sits on the floor there. It's on the stage there. And we can't see God anymore, we can only hear God. And God says, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? And Adam and Eve, they like shuffle, all of a sudden they realise something's gone wrong, and they start to run off, and the voice of God says, no, don't go yet. I've got something for you. And he gives them some clothes. And Eve takes this piece of clothes, it's like a thing that she wears, it's like a cloak, and she puts it on. And she puts on this sort of cloak, and it covers up the sort of embarrassment and shame. I haven't worked out how to do that in a theological, but she's obviously very shameful, as is Adam. And they put on this cloak and thing, and off they go. And they exit stage right. And you can't see them anymore. And you can't see God anymore. And the stage is empty. And all you can see is the tree, this beautiful creation, and this sort of empty fruit, still spilt some stuff on the floor. That's all we've got. Where are you? And almost that story continues. Where are you? Where are you? You hear that repeated verse, that repeated phrase being said over and again, and you don't know whether it's God who's saying it or whether it's people who are saying, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Next scene, same garden, exactly the same garden. Same place, same trees, same mess on the floor, same big tree over there. But this time a man enters the stage on the same right. Same garden. He comes in from where Adam and Eve have gone out. But he's wearing the same cloak as Eve, with his head covered over. You can't see his face. You don't quite know who it is, but there's a character who comes in. He's talking, and there are people behind him, and they're responding, and he's saying, not yet, but this way, this way. And he comes in from where Adam and Eve have been. You can hear them, but you can't see the rest of the people behind them. He shouts over his shoulder. He shouts over his shoulders, and where are you? Where are you? And they keep coming. But they're not here yet. And then as you look at his costume, you can't see his face, but you can see he's got one of the similar marks that the God figure had at the beginning. And is that something shiny that you can see underneath the cloak that he's wearing? You're not sure. You sit there and you feel unsure about what's happening. But then he goes over to the empty fruit that Adam and Eve were scooping out, delighting themselves on for a moment. But he picks up the empty shell of the fruit from the floor, and you can tell that it's not nice. He wants to leave it there. He wants to walk away, but he doesn't. You can see that he's hesitant. He wants to sort of move on, but he can't. He doesn't want to. He lifts up the fruit, and it's much heavier than it was for Adam and Eve. It's less tasty than it was for Adam and Eve. It's much heavier than it was before. And he picks it up, and then he very, very slowly walks off towards the tree on the other side of the stage. Is that something shiny you've just seen in his costume? Is that something, could it be, who is that? And then the story continues. This is the garden of salvation. This is the garden where salvation grows. And you'll see its fruit on Good Friday and on Easter morning. And you can taste its fruit today. This is the garden of salvation that we find ourselves in. And hopefully, you can put the pieces together and what's happening on the stage and stuff. But as we see Jesus kneeling on the floor, bearing his soul before God, we see God in action, the God who goes to win his people back, the God who steps out and does the only thing that anybody can do to bring God and humanity back together. And even for God, even for Jesus, you see that's a struggle. Where are you? Where are you? It seems to be the question that goes all the way through the whole of the human God narrative. And we find it in Jesus' words, basically, to the disciples. Where are you? They're asleep. Where are you? This is the thing that brought me to the piece of theatre is it's the same, it's almost like the same journey that Adam and Eve and God walked through at the beginning, but again comes through back to the other time where Jesus goes back as God and says to his disciples, where are you? Oh, they're asleep. The spirit's willing, but the flesh is weak. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? So, where does that bring us? Just to say, I think in terms of the ecological thing, what I've been struck about this week preparing for this is we can't have any kind of any engagement with the environment around us unless we acknowledge that we need God and we need a Saviour. That's what this texts bring to me as we think about our ecological investment and our ecological engagement. Is we need a Saviour. In the same way as Jesus seeks another way in the garden, we are to seek God in the garden. But the key, coming back to this question, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? And of course, Jesus then goes on to ask the same question of God on the cross later. Why are you forsaken me? Where are you, Father, as he's on the cross? Where are you in this sense of unanswered, seemingly prayer? I want to do something. Lord, I'll do it. I'll do your will. But if there's any other way, Lord, lead me to it. I don't know if you've ever felt like that as you've prayed and gone, oh Lord, if there's any other way, please take me to that other way. If there's any other way, Lord, may I go that way. So I'm going to reformulate the question, where are you, has echoed through the whole of the engagement between God and humanity. You are where Jesus is. You are and will be the most complete and full and whole and healed in the presence of Jesus as Lord. Physically, at the end of time, at the end of the play, and partially now with his Spirit alive within us. Next week we're going to be celebrating a baptism, and Leo is embarking on his beginning of his, well not really his beginning, but certainly a massive marker in his Christian journey as a stepdad. He says, I want to be baptised. And so this week we were thinking about what does it mean to make Jesus as Lord. One of the questions we say in baptism is, do you accept Jesus as your Lord? And there's a sense of saying yes, and Jesus models it perfectly in our text today. What does it look like to make Lord our God, Lord. And Jesus models how we can do that by saying, yes, not my will, your will be done. I've got all these things inside me that want to go in different directions, but ultimately I want to go your way. Jesus models the lordship of the Lord. And that's the greatest act of human worship that we can ever encounter, to give yourself fully to whatever God has for you. And I was thinking, is that different to Que Sera Sera or En Shahala? Is that different to whatever will be? It is different, because it's the deliberate giving of yourself. It's not just, oh, well, whatever happens, whatever. It's, Lord, I want your will in me. I welcome, invite, and require and desire your will in me. I welcome your plans for me. I ask that you will direct and send and project me. And it's not the same as, well, whatever happens to me, well, that'll be the will of God. It's saying, Lord, I welcome your purposes for me. And I think that's why every Sunday, sometimes I think, why? So we say, I'm going to let you into a trick. You've just done confession once. We're going to say the Lord's Prayer again in a minute. And it's not confession again. Why do we keep doing this? Why do we keep having our prayers of confession and saying, your will become, your will be done? And I think it's the act of grace, just saying, Lord, I want to be back in your purposes. I want to be back in your direction. Because I know I stray. I know I do. But Lord, I come back and I want you to be the Lord of my life. I want to give my life over to you. I want to redirect me and correct my course. So we can say it a lot and a lot and a lot. I think that's good. I've come to a position now where I think that's great to say, Lord, I've gone the wrong way and I want to get back to your way. And I'll happily say that 5 minutes after I've just said it before. So be free in that and ask the Lord to redirect us back into his plans. It's not the same as fatalism. It's a direct and diligent giving of yourself into the purposes of the kingdom of God. An active offering of yourself. Lord, your will be done. I give myself to you. Let's take a minute to pray and let that waft off or settle in. Thank you so much for the way this text mirrors Eden. But goes in a different direction. Thank you, Lord, that you respond to the question, where are you? Thank you that you do it so obediently and generously and courageously. As we prepare for communion, as we prepare ourselves for tomorrow, as we prepare ourselves for adventures and into next week, and for some whole new life unfolding in here in Lyon or elsewhere, Lord, we do commit our ways to you. We deliberately and intentionally say, your will be done. Your kingdom come. Lord, thank you for taking the cup for us. We worship you and we give you thanks. In the name of your Son,